Is your consulting or coaching business in the product, service, or the transformation industry? Find out with my guest, Joseph Pine, on today's episode of the Consulting Matters podcast. Welcome to the Consulting Matters podcast. This is the show for purpose-driven consultants and coaches who are ready to own the power of what they do and position themselves for greater impact and income. I'm your host, Betsy Jordan, and I am both a business mentor and a brand positioning and messaging strategist. You can find out about all the things I do to help my clients repackage the best of their career and turn it into a business that they and their clients love on my website at www.betsyjordan.com. So let's get into today's episode, which is all about getting your consulting or coaching business firmly in the transformation business. And what this means is shifting your perspective from whatever you do with your clients and whatever you want to sell them and seeing that as really more the means to a bigger end, which is what your clients truly desire, and which is achieving their aspirations and becoming the person that they want to become or becoming the business that they want to become. And without this shift, we leave value on the table. So to help us unpack this and to help you see the path from products to services to experiences to transformation, I am so excited. I'm beyond excited to bring you author, speaker, and advisor to Fortune 500 companies like my beloved Disney, where I first got introduced to his work back in 1999 when I was a brand new OD consultant, Joseph Pine. So one of my first projects when I was at Disney was with the Fort Wilderness Campgrounds. So the GM was Cesar, and at our very first meeting, he handed me Joe's Experience Economy book. And he's like, listen, I want you to take these ideas and help me implement it so we can stage engaging and immersive experiences for all our guests at the fort. So I have been a fan of Joe's work since then. And so I'm even more of a fan of his with his brand new book on the transformation economy, which made me realize why I have all these butterflies all over the place. Like I got it on my wrist, I got it in my icon, I have it behind me because I love our industry. I love the transformation industry and how much transformation is such a key part of what I do with my clients and what I help them do with their clients. So in today's episode, we're going to get into the differences between the product, service, experience, and transformation economy. We're going to talk about what transformation really is and how understanding this transforms your understanding of what the product that you are offering your client actually is. You're going to learn the steps you need to take to make this shift into transformation. So without further ado, I'm so excited. Welcome to the show, Joe.
It's an honor, Betsy. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, as I said before, so I've been a fan of your work from the time I was like a brand new OD consultant back in 1999 and getting ready for our episode. I went and dug into my archives of like all my Disney stuff and I found this like work session agenda that I did on the experience economy. Like that was like the huge book back in when did you write that book?
99 it came out, the first edition, and we've got two other editions, the last one in 2020.
So that's when I first got introduced to you with the work, is I had a client hand me the book and said, implement this. And so hopefully when you saw that agenda, you're like, oh, she really did this. But anyway, I could go on and on and on about how awesome you are. And other times when I was at Disney, when you got brought in,
Don't let me.
I, okay, but it's like, okay, so this show has to serve like my audience and not just for me and me fangirling. But I also remember when, Disney was going through a lot of transformation, and you were part of those big projects. So I've been a fan of your work for a really, really long time. Like I remember we were going through this whole like digital transformation thing. I don't know if you were a part when Disney started letting people, get their bags at home and then like the magic bands and all of the other
Yeah, I
immersive.
remember the Magic Bus. Yeah.
So is that all part of you?
Well, yes, I did. I did workshops that I remember that idea came out over. The folks I were working did that. I can't lay any claim to it, nor to the Magic Band, which which John Paget tells me was inspired by workshops that I did, where I really emphasized the fact that Disney, like premier experience stage in the world, but it's all mass. It's not individual, and you need to get down to that individual. And so that spark, I think, led them to, is at least one of the streams that led them to coming up with the Magic Band. And eventually John Paget leaving there and joining Carnival to come up with the medallion class at Princess Cruise that takes it even farther.
That's so fun. Okay, I've gotta stop fangirling. I have to go serve my audience. We are here to talk we're here to talk about this book. We're here to talk about The Transformation Economy, your latest, greatest book. But before we get into it, I want for my listeners to kind of back up. Like, so you have I looked in your LinkedIn profile. I thought it was surprising. You have an education in math and technology, before. So it's like now you're talking about transformation. So could you just like take a little bit of a just a high level overview of your career and how you went from here to there.
Yeah, I'm a nerd from way back, Betsy. I used computers before that was the thing. Starting in seventh grade, my dad was in the computer industry in the ground floor, and so I did get applied math degree, so I could use both computers and math. That's great at both, and English for that matter. And joined IBM, worked there for 13 years. Moved from technical jobs to management and strategy, and as a reward for a project I did, IBM sent me to MIT for a year to get my master's degree. And I found out I had to write a thesis. So I said, well, to myself, well, I'm going to write a thesis I can turn into a book. And that was my first book, actually, Mass Customization, based on Stan Davis's great book, Future Perfect, where he introduced that term. And I worked in strategy to get that idea of efficiently serving customers uniquely, right? Again, that not mass, but individual, but efficient, right? That is the mass part. Got into our plans and strategies at IBM, and then wrote the book on it. And after it came out, about 6 months later, IBM offered my wife and I 6 months salary to leave. So I said, let's see if I can make it on my own. Many decades later, my wife's still not sure it's going to work out, but so far so good. And so through mass customization, I discovered the experience economy and the transformation economy, for that matter, by recognizing that mass customizing goods automatically turns them into services, because you have that service of helping them design exactly what it is they want, but only then, no inventory, right? Only then do you produce it on demand and give it to individual customer. And when asked, what does mass customization turn a service into, I shot back that mass customization turns a service into an experience. And that was, just came out of my mouth, no forethought, just providence. And I realized, well, if that's true, if you design a service that's so appropriate for a particular person, that you can't help but make them go wow and turn it into a memorable event, right? And that's what an experience was. And asking that question at the same time, one more time, this is in the mid '90s, yeah, of what customization turns experience into, is where I got, well, it's a life-changing experience, and that's the transformation. So that I recognize that experiences and transformations were distinct economic offerings, therefore there'd be economies based off of them. And that led to, with my partner, Jim Gilmore, who we actually had our 30th anniversary as a partnership yesterday, our
Wow.
managing partner as well. That led to the articles in the book on the experience economy, of which the last two chapters were on transformation. But people have been asking me for 25 years, when are you going to write a full book on it? And I finally said, okay, time's right.
So, uh, like, I know for sure when I was at Disney, we didn't really get quite into the whole transformation, so I have been waiting as well. Could you explain this model a little bit more? I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
just like for those who are new to it, and I don't know if you have like a version of this that I can put into
Yeah,
onto my blog so that
yep,
people
I
can
can do that.
see this particular figure. But I really, for my listeners, it would be important for us to understand like the commodities, goods, services, and transformation and the differences. And if you could explain it also as it relates to like consultants and coaches as well, like how we can move, what causes, what are the differences at the different levels?
Yeah, so that framework's called the progression of economic value, right? That is the core framework of both of these books, where we've gone from an agrarian economy based off commodities to an industrial economy based off goods to a service economy. And then what's happened is that goods and services are being commoditized, right? Where they're treated like commodities, where people basically want to buy purely on price and convenience, right? That's when your offering's been commoditized. And so as I mentioned, commoditization is like the law of gravity, drags you down year after year. Customization lifts you up, turning goods into services, services into experiences, and experiences into transformations. So experiences are we use goods as props and services as the stage to engage each and every person in an inherently personal way, right? Thereby creating a memory, which is the hallmark of the experience, right? So it is about um, An easy way to think about it is commodities, goods, and services provide time well saved, but experiences provide time well spent. People value the time that they spend with you. So you think about, I've certainly seen the term coaching services and that, which is basically what matters is what you are doing for them. But your clients, if you want to call them that, I like to prefer the term aspirants when we get to there, but your clients don't care about your inputs, right? They don't care about what you do. It's the time, first of all, the time they spend with you. So you create an experience with them that is memorable. By being memorable, they get to remember the principles that you're teaching them. They get to remember the activities that they need to do. They get to remember how to apply this to their life. And that application is the true transformation, right? Which uses experience as the raw material to guide people to change, to help them achieve their aspirations, right? That's what transformations are. That's what business coaching is really in. And a way to understand that is look at the economic function. So, there's three dynamics in the diagram that you show, and I'll give you a copy that you can put on your site. There's the commoditization dragging you down. There's customization lifting you up. But in the middle, there's another five things that are going on, and that's commodification, to get a little academic on you, right? That's where you turn something into an economic offering. And so there, the words we use there define the economic function, that you extract commodities, you manufacture or make goods, you deliver services. Again, it's about what you do delivering, but you stage experiences, right? And Disney know this very well, right? Staging simply means you intentionally design everything to create a particular set of impressions that create those memories and fulfill the theme of the experience. And then the economic function of transformations, though, is guide. You guide transformations. You don't make anybody transform. They have to transform themselves, right? You have to create the conditions under which you guide them, in which they will climb that mountain and reach the peak, right, under your guidance. But you're not dragging them up there. They have to do it under their own volition. And of course, if you look up the synonym for guide, right, the very first one you're going to come up with is coach. Right? Guiding is coaching. Coaching is guiding. And all coaches are, whether they know it or not, whether they do it well or not, whether they do it intentionally or not, they're in the transformation business.
So as it relates to the differences of like the commodities, goods, services, experiences, and transformation, you could kind of see it makes sense, like all the different phases. Like you have in the commodities is you might go and buy like the flour, and then the goods might be as I might buy the cake, and then services somebody, I think you have that
Well,
example.
the goods is where you buy the cake mix.
Oh, you buy the
Right.
cake mix. Okay.
Cake
So
mix. The
you
services is buying the cake. Somebody does it for you. And then you've
and
got the
then
birthday party experience.
So I could see like the progression makes sense, but it's like, how does that relate to a consulting or coaching world? Like, what would be at the commodity level versus the goods versus the services experiences?
Yes, yeah, I often work with companies in developing their own progression of economic value and understanding what those core commodities are and all the way up. I do when I do that, I say it's not always important to understand what the commodities are, and I think that's the case in coaching. That it's sort of immaterial, but I'll talk about it in a second, or at least potentials. But it's also feel free to take poetic license with it. Like when I talk about an MBA progression of economic value, which I do a lot, I talk about commodities or the ideas and publications, right? They're not truly commodities. Publications are physical goods or digital services. Ideas are related to knowledge, which are more experiential than that. But they're sort of commoditized because all business schools have them because the professors have to publish. So it's sort of like the core thing that people are buying. And then at the goods level, you've got the books that they buy, those the actual publications, the gear that they need to have. At the service level, you've got the teaching of information, and then the analysis of your homework. At the experience level, you've got knowledge and networking that you're getting from out of the MBAs. But at the top level, it's really the new capabilities and new career that you want to have, is why you go to that MBA. And so you're sort of similar to coaching. You may think about the commodities, and again, you don't have to go to this level, but you may think about the commodities as sort of the method by which you coach. I think mostly of therapists here. Where some are of Freudian school, and some are of Gestalt school, and some are logotherapy and that sort of thing. And sort of that's sort of the base, right? That you're working from is whatever method you have, maybe your own and maybe amalgamation, but that's sort of the base of what's going on there. And then the physical goods are the things that are around when you do the coaching. And maybe you've written a book, you've written some articles that you share. It may be that they're coming to you in your office with your chairs, and again, thinking about more of a psychotherapist, the couch that you may meet on, or you go to their offices, and everything then is a prop, right? That you can say, well, let me describe mass customization. I just happen to have Lego bricks on hand, right? Where I can talk about modularity, right? I've got all these other things. I just happen to have a Geek Squad badge, right? I can talk about how work is theater when you stage an experience and so forth, right? So these are the props that you use. Then the services are what you do. And maybe the preparation you put into it beforehand. It may be the reaction to what's going on. It's basically what you say, what you demonstrate, that yields the impressions in their minds, and what they how they take that in and think about and create knowledge within them. Right, that's sort of at the experience level. But then it is the outcome that's at the transformation level. What is the outcome of this coaching? What is the actual effect, the impact it has on the coachee? What term do you use, Betsy, for that?
Well, I think at this point it's just clients. Like I like
Right, right,
Aspire and better. And it's
right,
like for consultants and coaches working in
right,
organizations or coaches as individuals, that it's like it sounds like what you're saying at the end of the day is like it's really aligning what you do to it's really just repositioning like what you do from like they're not buying my coaching hours, they're not buying my consulting advice, they're buying the impact, like how does that
right.
transform them in some way?
Exactly,
So it seems like
exactly.
at the base level, like the commodity, like any consultant or coach could have like the lean philosophy or the Harrison assessment or
There you
whatever
go.
the tool is. The good
Tools.
might yeah, the tools or like the good might be is like you get the assessment or maybe have an e-course, like that's a good. The services might be is like the personalized things that I do. Experiences might be when I create it to be more immersive. But all of it seems to change is if I'm looking at how do I create the solution that will actually create the transformation.
Right, right. Because recognize that nobody wants to buy coaching fundamentally. It's a means to an end. What they
Yeah.
want is to be a better X, right? To gain new capabilities, to become better in some way, and coaching is a means to be able to do that. So it's that outcome that they have an aspiration. You may be working with a large client, a business, and you're coaching many different people, and the business has their own aspiration for where they want to take their management, their leadership, even their frontline workers to. But they also have their own individual, where are they at and what do they want to become, that you have to take into account. You can't just drill in, the ideas of where management wants you to go without treating them as an individual person, customizing to them. And that's where to recognize that I'll use the term aspirants, as they are aspirants. I'm not
Mm.
saying that's a term you may want to use with them, but if you understand and use that term, it changes your mindset, which then starts to change your own behavior, to recognize that this isn't a client where I'm doing things for them. That's what the client basically means. It's that they are an aspirant, and whatever I do doesn't matter unless they achieve their aspiration. Right? That's the core mindset that you need to have once you recognize you're in the transformation business.
So, one of the things I tell my clients when I work with them on their brand positioning and we establish the context for their help is I would say, okay, your client is on a journey of transformation, whether you're with them or not. Like, this is their trajectory. They're going down this path, and it has nothing to do with you making them go down the path. This is their path. The idea of positioning is making sure that you are positioned as that person who comes alongside them. So I use the word partner more than I wouldn't. I don't use the I look at it as partnership. I like the word mentor and guide, but it still kind of like conveys like a little bit more of a one up, one down.
Right.
I like the word partner is somebody who comes alongside them on the journey that you're on. So the whole point of why you work on your brand positioning is I want to be able to know the trajectory. I don't want to just know the person. And I want to know the person and their trajectory so I can position myself to walk alongside them on this journey of transformation that they're already going on. And I think that's I don't know if that resonates with what your philosophy is.
It
If
does.
you
No,
and
I
I
think that's
are our
beautiful.
mind melds and we're on the
Right.
same page.
Right. I think that's beautiful. I don't think it applies in every situation, but I do think that's beautiful. I always love the term coming alongside and thinking about how you're with them on their journey. When you think about the trajectory of the journey, I define that generally as a from to statement.
Yeah.
Right. Where are they
True.
today? What do they want to become? Right. And then you design the set of experiences they need to have to get them from here to there. Right. And there, I think there will be situations, particularly if you think about once you get to the end of that journey and they go, but I have this other thing I have an issue with, or to get them to spark new aspirations once they've achieved that. That there are times when you may want to meet with people at the very start. You may be meeting with people at the very start of the journey, as opposed to somewhere in the midway point. And often, why are they at a midway point? Because right now they're their own general contractor of their journey, and generally, if you're not a professional as a general contractor, you do a lousy job.
Yeah.
Right? You don't really do. That's why we need transformation guiders. That's why we need coaches to come alongside us and do that, because generally we don't do a very good job of it ourselves.
And I think that the thing is that they don't always know what they don't know. So this is where when what I teach my clients is like when somebody comes to you and asks for methodology, which is at the commodities and the good level, maybe even the service level, but it's like you always have to stop them because my experience with clients always wrong. Like they'll always ask for training, and I'll say like training is often necessary, rarely sufficient. Like rarely is it just knowledge and skills that you need.
Right.
Like you need other things. You need your perspective to change. You need you need some tools, like, you need a lot of other things to change in order to complete that journey. So, it seems like if you're a consultant or coach and you wanna guide somebody in a transformation, you really do have to back up beyond not even just what you might wanna sell a client on, but what they might even ask you for so that you can create a more comprehensive solution that actually is customized to them. And that seems like the only way that you'll be in the like you say customization keeps going up. It seems like that is the only way that you're gonna hit the transformation, and I think you addressed that in your book in a beautiful way. Could you explain why in order to create transformations, things do need to be customized to somebody?
Well, well, it's because of what's happening inside of you. Think about commodities, goods, services. They exist outside of us. Right? For the first time, experiences exist inside of us. It's our reaction to the events that are staged in front of us. That's why I call them economically inherently personal. Right? Inherently personal. Right? No two people have the same experience, even if they're in the same place at the same time, because of their background, because of their mood that day, because of all these things that are going on. But transformations then reach inside of you, and through experiences, right, as the progression indicates, all transformations are based off of experience. We never change except through the experiences that we have. We're all the product of our experiences, as the saying goes. So when you reach inside with those experiences, then they change inside, right? We change from the inside out. Again, they're doing the changing, right? Not you. And so you have. So it's I just say it's individual, right? Experiences are inherently personal, but transformations are individual. The customer is the product, right? Think
Mm.
about it that way, right? The economic offering you provide is a change customer. Again, not anything that you do, but what they become. And therefore it is necessarily very, very individual. There are transformations. There's the single life-changing transformations that in an instant or in an hour, we find ourselves changed. But that and that doesn't need to be customized. It's just happenstance, right? It's just the circumstances that where you bring together the learner and the master at the same time, and boom, that sort of thing. But for the most part, you're working with them through a series of experiences. You need to design the experiences to be customized, the sequence to be customized, and then every individual to be customized. You also need to sense and respond to when something needs to change in that sequence that that you may have predefined, and go off your own path of how you might tend to do things, because as you're going up and to the right, it's never monotonically increasing. There's always ups and downs. There's regress as well as progress. You need to sense and respond to that and be able to handle that as well, which individually happens for every person at a different point in time, and the response will need to be individual as well. It's just an inherent part of what coaching and guiding means.
I have so many follow-up questions. That you had a lot to say here. I need to zero in on one thing that I think is absolutely brilliant. And I think I'm gonna probably use this phrase a lot because of how brilliant it is. It's that the customer is the product of what you're selling. I think a lot of consultants and coaches have a really hard time like putting themselves out there, writing copy, putting themselves out there because it's like, oh my God, I'm the product, I'm the service, I'm the brand.
Right, right.
And I think that you're creating a very important fundamental shift in mindset at this exact moment is if you're in the transformation business, the product, what you're selling is their transformation.
Right.
You're not selling yourself, you're selling their transformation. That's your product. That is what you're selling. That's your economic engine is their transformation.
Right. Right.
Did I get
Exactly.
that right?
Yep. Yep. That's right. And let me ask you a question, Betsy. I've always said I'm not a brand guy, right? So let me preface by saying that. But when I think about branding, I always think that the brand actually exists inside of your customers or your potential customers, right? You may define what you want the brand to be, but what it's its intersection with what you are saying generically or expansively, and what they are experiencing is where the brand is actually formed. And so everybody has their own different little view of what that brand is. And I think that aligns with this notion that the customer is the product, because the brand is inside the customer as well. At least the brand in practice is, even if it's not the brand in theory that you want it to be.
I'm trying to
Don't
find
think
the
so?
part in your book that I think that relates to it. There was a whole I don't remember which chapter was on purpose.
Yeah,
Um,
chapter 5.
so, when you're talking about, like, the purpose, the way I look at it is the brand to me is the intersection. So, like, here's your client, they're on their journey, but then there's the unique
Right.
aspect of you and what kind of guide you are. And to me, the brand is like that overlap, like the intersection. It's not just about up the client alone, and it's not just about you alone. It's about when you're working with that person and you're applying like your unique lens because like just like no customer is the same, no guide's the same.
Right.
We're all different. And so the catalytic moment, I think you talk about alchemy in the book as well, but it's like when you have that alchemical reaction is like, well, this is the person, but the consultant is each consultant and coach is different. So it creates a different transformation for each person. So it's like to me it's the overlap, but the starting point is the client. It's the client and their problems, the journey of transformation that they're on. And the only way that you'll ever even figure this out is you got to get out of your head into their head. Like and I think you have a lot of tips around tapping into the aspirants mindset and understanding the world. Like can you share some of those tips on how do you tap and hack into that person's head?
Well, it's there's many different ways to think about that. One is to understand the true aspiration. Recognize that if you just ask them what that aspiration is, generally you're not going to get a good answer from that.
That's true.
It's something you often have to uncover, right, or discover, and maybe help them discover what that is. So one of the ways I like to think about that is if you get technology involved is with some sort of design tool, which could be your methodology, right, of asking this sort of questions in these ways. It could be something where you help them visualize their future self. And with AI today, you can basically, take a stick drawing of what I think my aspiration is, and then put it into AI, and it can make it something beautiful that actually makes sense of what you're trying to do, and give you something to respond to, where it's not just yours anymore. Now it's out there, so I can think about that and say, yeah, maybe more about this, and so forth. Um, it's also important to understand where your aspirants are coming from. The framework for different types of catalysts for transformations. That when we wrote the experience economy, my original conception was always like it was like the bluebird of happiness came down and gave you an aspiration, right? Well, no, that's rarely happens. But there can be those that are sort of you're directing yourself, and right, and you've thought about this is what I want. But a lot of aspirations come via happenstance, via what I'll call discovery. That you particularly see this with what's called transformational travel, where you go to a place, you get out of your quotidian life, you encounter new vistas and new places and new people, and it's like, wow, I discovered something about myself, or discovered something about who I want myself to be, and that sparks that desire for a transformation journey. It may be pure serendipity, where you just sort of happen along. You meet somebody in a cafe, you watch a movie that sparks something, and so forth. So you weren't really planning on anything to happen, and then. There's also, it turns out, a lot of transformation that happen out of what I'll call disruption, right? That your life is disrupted in some way, your business is disrupted in some way. I will bet a lot of the coaching you do is, in fact, because of disruption going on in the business or in the life. I discovered that trauma is a large a catalyst for transformation, which I hadn't really thought about before. That something happens in your life. You lose a loved one, you get fired, you get a cancer diagnosis, right? All these different types of trauma, and what happens there is that actually you're immediately changed when you have trauma, right? But not in a positive way, right? In a negative way. Because all transformation is identity change. And your identity just changed, right? I'm a person with cancer, right? I am
Right.
a widow. I am no longer a worker, right? An employee. I got fired, that sort of thing. And then it's a matter of bringing them back to whole, a new whole. You'll never go back to that person, right? So it is a metamorphosis when you have that immediate identity change. But you can bring them back to discover what parts in themselves that need to come to the fore now, and what new aspects of identity that you need to take on to recover from that trauma and be a I'll just say a whole person again.
This is what I call like the call to business adventure. I would say the majority of my clients, I work with mid-career professionals who leave it and become a consultant or coach. And I think out of all the clients that I've worked with over the past 10, 15 years, only one of them really got to it just strictly because of vision. Like, oh, I decided a year in advance
Well,
that I want to retire and I'm going to go make this plan. Everybody else got fired, got laid off, had some sort of like really bad job redefinition, burnout, something like that's where I think and the we both are fans of the heroic journey. There's always the call to adventure and then there's the refusal of the call because it's like, well, I don't like nobody wants any of this.
right.
Like who wants this change? Like Luke Skywalker, like Obi-Wan's like, hey, let's, come with me and learn the force. It's like, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna go to Tashi Station and get some power converter. It's like, I don't need that. But then his aunt and uncle died, and he's like, well, I guess I don't have a choice. Now I'm forced into it. Nobody goes on because of all the unknown, how difficult it is. Nobody asks for it, but it is the transformation. It is the transformation template. Like, I think why I think the butterflies are fascinating is like it's like it just goes into the cocoon and then it like the caterpillar literally digests itself of everything, like not the adult butterfly. Seems pretty violent in there. Like that does not seem like a,
Absolutely. I don't know what goes on.
you know? Like, we make it seem like they go in like this and out like they have wings, but nobody really talks about, like, the cocoon seems like it must suck, It must not be it's icky, you know?
Gotta be icky, right?
So, I think to your point about the general contractor, I don't think it's like you're in the middle of it. I think it's like you're in the middle of it because it's messy and yucky,
Right.
and therefore you need a guide or you need somebody who's been in the muck who can kinda show you. Because I think in our magical world, like from transformation, I think a lot of us wants to go and become a caterpillar, and then we just wanna take some wings and tap it onto ourselves, and we don't wanna go through that in between process, and we're ready to fly. Like, And I think that that's where a
Uh,
lot of people, like,
Totally.
manifest change, like, we just
Yeah.
wanna you too can manifest yourself into some sort of spiritual being. I'm like, "Okay, but you gotta go through the cocoon."
Right.
It's the way. It's the sucky way.
Yeah, and I know you're a big fan of this book as well as I am. Christopher
Yes.
Vogel's The Writer's Journey. If anybody wants to fully get into the hero's journey, this is the book to get. Don't get Joseph Campbell's book. It stinks, actually. I don't think the book's very good. But that book is
It's
wonderful, and I use
Joseph
it
Campbell's hard
as
to
right, right. I use it as my guide in creating a more generic transformation journey, right? Which also is in chapter 5 of the book. 12 steps that includes. I use different words like it's call to adventure, right? Is where the aspiration forms. The refusal, I simply call hesitation, right? There's a hesitation there, and so on. And one of the things that comes through there is I think is one of the most important models I think for your audience, and a model that I'm sure that most all of them already do in one way, shape, or form because it's sort of natural and it's very academically researched of what works in that. But the way to turn any experience, and you think of back in your Disney days as well, Betsy, any experience they have into a transformative one is best done and fairly easily done. Well, at least the first two parts with what I call encapsulation. And encapsulation is when you take that experience and you do preparation beforehand, reflection afterward, and then integration on an ongoing basis. Okay. And so almost any experience, including the one-on-one sessions that you have with your aspirants, where you prepare them beforehand about what you're going to talk about what the possibilities might be, about thinking about where they're at, right, versus coming in cold, get them thinking of it ahead of time. You have that coaching experience or any other experience, and then you have reflection, right? The last part of it, because ideally it's done immediately. There are other ways to do it, but ideally immediately have them reflect on that and what happened. And reflection retroactively and automatically increases the value of what they just went through, and it gets them really cementing the memories of what happened, thinking about what the possibilities are, thinking about what those next steps. Reflection is always a preparation for the next adventure, the next part of the experience that you'll go through the journey, and then integration is then how you help them take those changes that happen with the experience and reflection and integrate them in their lives, right? Which is really what coaching does. And often, like you said, even you said they're often on a transformation journey and you're helping them in the middle of it. Sometimes they will come to you at the end of it because they don't know how to keep it going. They don't know how to really
Right.
integrate it into their lives. And there's a term now, integration therapists, right? There also should be integration coaching, right? Think about the
Yeah.
coaching you can do on people that have transformed, but the companies they work with there or as their own general contractor, there is no integration going on. There's no follow through to the experience, and they're left to their own devices, and then it can dissipate, and eventually go away. Integration is so very important to the sustenance, to the long-term sustaining of the transformation.
So applying that model around how you can take anything and make it, like, more transformational, I wanna use one of my clients, one of my favorite things that one of my clients offer. My client is Katie Anderson, and she takes people who are lean practitioners or people who are trying to create that type of transformation in the organization, and she takes them to Japan.
Mm.
And what I think is really interesting about our experience, so it could be people who are internal or external lean consultants. It could be an intact leadership team, or it could be a manager who just wants to lead in another way. And they all come out right raving. Like, I read these testimonials, like, and I'm crying because of their testimony, their stories. I'm like, why does this work? But what she does is, like, she has the core of the experience is going to Japan. So in this experience, they go with colleagues or they go with their intact team. They go to learn at the actual site, so they learn from all of these different Japanese companies, like, how they do things. Then they get, like, Japanese cultural experiences that are really meaningful throughout the whole time, like, they're doing, like, ongoing reflection. But what Katie does that's unique is she bookends it. So she bookends it with a lot of, like, intention setting beforehand, a lot of
Yep,
preparation for it.
yep,
And then she does a lot of post stuff, where there's a lot of work to help them turn it into an action plan and do a lot of post trip reflection. I know it works the testimonials will say it works. It's really hard to get like benefit driven testimonials we have because the transformation is so emotional. But why does it work? Like, if you were going to use this as an example of a totally a transformational experience, why does this work in a way than what a typical person might do with bring a bunch of people and have them in a workshop in an office somewhere?
Right, right. Well, it does perfectly exemplify the encapsulation that I talk about. Also recognized by going to Japan, you're instituting that transformational travel effect, right? Where we are most research and practice shows we are most open to change when we get out of our daily life, right? So we leave that office behind, we leave the daily work behind. Hopefully, they're not doing emails at night in their hotel room, but
Right.
some of that will go on. But they're focused and they're opening themselves up, right? And then the fact that you have this series of experiences that they are going through, and ideally, Katie is reflecting at the end of each day or even at the end of each segment of the day, right, on it and getting people to talk about it. You've also got the group accountability effect, the more excited, the most excited person gets about it, then the more excited everybody else is going to get. They'll lift themselves up because they're part of a cohort, and which is why you also have to worry about the cynics that it may drag them down. And so you're encapsulating it perfectly. You're getting them out of their normal routine, opening themselves up to new possibilities. So it's a beautiful way to do it.
So that's so that for her, she has this unique opportunity because like there's lean and there's Japan. Like you really like
Yeah.
that's an unusual thing. For others who don't have like that same type of thing, any other tips around how they can create their whole experience to be more engaging? Like I think you had one of the elements is like the aesthetics and the entertainment value, and some people might read, like, those elements like, "Well, I don't have any," like, I mean, I think I have aesthetics with, like, because I offer websites, so, like, when my clients see, like, their photos and their thing, I have the aesthetics, but I'm not super entertaining. It's not like I'm gonna do a little song and dances when I help my clients with their brand positioning. I mean, it's fun and it's kinda like I mean, it's not that it's hard work, it's not that easy, so how do we make it a entertainment and all the other things that you have?
Right. Well, so one is, I've often myself taken clients on experience expeditions, particularly so they experience some of the best a city has to offer. So I've done it in New York, Chicago, Las Vegas. I've done it in Los Angeles and Seattle and Oregon, just based on particular things. I've always wanted to do it at the Mall of America. I live in the Minneapolis area, and I always wanted to just do that. But they're able to align a client with that. Um, and I thought myself about how do I do that with transformations, right? You can't go to a city and experience 10 different transformative places and change 10 different times, in a day or day and a half. So it's much more difficult to do. Um, but you but you can use the elements of experience staging in particularly in workshops, more so than in one-to-one, but even there. So what you're alluding to is a core framework in the experience economy that I sort of updated a bit for the transformation economy. In chapter 5, a lot of the things we're talking about are there. Encapsulations in chapter 4, by the way. But basically, we call it the 4E model, where you can have 4 different realms of experience: entertainment, educational, escapist, and aesthetic, right? Aesthetic, not with an AE, because that would ruin the 4E model, but also because it's more of an architecture firm about the built environment. And the key is the best and most robust experiences are those that are going to hit the sweet spot in the middle, that have aspects of all 4 realms. So it's basically how do you help people enjoy, which is the entertainment realm? How do you help them learn, which may be the primary one you're looking at with educational, in which case you want to reach out to the others. How do you help them go and do the escapist realm? And how do you help them come in, sit down, and just be, which is the aesthetic realm, right? Have aspects of all 4 of those. One of the things in the updated edition, the experience economy, Jim Gilmore and I added, is we actually looked at all the pairwise combinations, right? Of which one we already know well, edutainment, right? Education, and the idea is that we learn better when we're entertained, when you hold our attention, right? What entertainment does is it holds our attention, telling jokes and so forth. and but then look at education plus escapist or eduscapist experiences. That's what we're talking about going to Japan, right? Eduscapist is a field trip, is going someplace and be able to learn. So get people out of the workshops. One of the things I like to do, I got from my friend and colleague Dave Norton, is actually as part of reflection, is do it on a walkabout, right? Is you've been in a conference room all day, let's let's team up in pairs, let's go walk around outside, take a half hour, 45 minutes, and talk about everything that's been going on, and get people to, reflect on that, learn from each other, and then get out of that normal environment. And then there's aesthetic, right, which is control the environment. What is the best place? Don't go into a nondescript hotel room if you can help it, but how do you um, um, create an environment that gets people amenable to learning? Like, for example, comfy chairs that don't make them want to stand up all the time, but not so comfy that they sort of get like this as well. There's that happy.
Right. Yeah.
So so that's one framework to apply. We also then talk about creating cohesive experience through theming, right? Theming well. Every Disney experience theme. In fact, every experience is themed. The question is just whether it's done intentionally or not. So with that theme, how do you make it cohesive by understanding what all of the elements that you need to design in it are that uphold that one cohesive theme of the experience? And that's where, for transformations, I take theme up to meaningful purpose. Right? The meaningful purpose is when that theme applies to an entire organization, entire business, or to your own business of what you're doing, then it really becomes a meaningful purpose. Just as with the 4 E's, you can think about what entertainment sparks a change in appreciation. Educational realm sparks a change in understanding. The escapist realm sparks a change in capabilities. And the entertainment realm was a change in viewpoint. Aesthetic is a change in appreciation, and you can use those. In the experience economy, we talk about work is theater, right? Again, the Geek Squad badge about how do you use props to be able to provide a level of theater that you don't otherwise, and you need a dramatic structure to it. Well, that's the hero's journey, right? That we talk about with that transformation journey, and with customization is another core aspect of the experiences. How do you think about that, and including creating transformation platforms that allows you to easily connect together different experiences to create them. Like in the coaching business, Betsy, you've heard of BetterUp?
Mhm.
Yep. Right. So it's a transformation platform that allows people in businesses where they're undergoing some sort of transformation to connect with the right coach, customized to you, and then be able to deliver that virtually through that platform, as well as with AI sort of taking the time in between with inspiration, tips, follow up, follow through, and so forth. So those are a number of things that you can think about doing to make that core experience more transformative.
It feels like what you're saying in some ways is like just widen the lens over the whole experience. Like what I'm hearing is a little bit of like elevate your perspective. So elevate your perspective beyond the goods and the commodities, the goods, the services, the experiences, and to think about the transformation. So elevate that, but then broaden your perspective around all the different factors that go into that transformation, the shift of perception, the shift of capabilities, all of these other things, but then also look at the entire experience of what you're providing for that person. Pay attention to the aesthetics. Like to me that I'm really attentional about my aesthetics in terms of my visual branding. So like if somebody's on like my background matches, like you can see on my butterflies, you see my butterflies, it all matches. Then I have it on my website and then I have custom PowerPoints that are pretty. I think they're pretty. So I'm paying attention to the aesthetic,
Right.
but I'm also paying attention to like when I have my community meetings, like adding in a community element so that there's a little bit more like I don't have it's not just all the drudgery of working with me. You have other people and I could rely on them to be funny, if I'm not funny. Like there's other things that you can do, but just seems like it's just widen your lens. Like if you're gonna be in the transformation economy, widen your lens and then deepen your insight. It seems like it's those 2 things, like widen your lens over the entire experience, but deepen your insight on the person that you're reaching. And I think what's interesting about what you're saying about the customization is in this digital marketing world, the idea of customization is like the big no-no. Like, no, you're nirvana. Your business like will hit as if you have a set offer for everybody. And it's like I've tried to adapt to it, but I don't know. Maybe it's the experience economy person in me, the transformation economy person in me. I can't do it. Like I cannot physically do it. I have to do the right solution. Like no two
Right.
clients have the same thing, but
Exactly.
everybody else, all my peers, everybody else in the market would say you need to go to groups. You need to have a set program. People are joining for this one program. When they got on a discovery call, you're selling this one program. You want to fill the seats of this one program,
Right.
which is like a group coaching program. And I feel like you got to go the other way because that's not going to do it. So it seems like there's this widen the perspective, but deepen the insight in general of your clients, but then the person who's right in front of you. I don't know if I
Yeah.
got any of that right. Comment
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong or what your thoughts.
The most important thing is a living, breathing person in front of you at this moment in time, right? You got to be present. You got to be there. Um, and in terms of widening the lens, I think that you think about it just not certainly as a period by period model, right? I often say with companies, one period model where you just think you're interacting with the one time, but the coaches know there's going to be multiple times. But still, it's not just period by period. It's where is those periods going? It's the sequence of experiences. It's the set of encapsulated experiences, each one encapsulated, that you need to design and respond to and sense and respond again. So widen your leads out there, but also recognize that's not the end all be all because this I call this encapsulation writ large. There are three phases to a transformation, which is diagnosis beforehand, right? Like preparation, it's understanding who is this customer, what do they aspire to become. Then you design that set of experiences, you have the set of encapsulated experience, and then the integration writ large is follow through. How do you follow through with them to make sure that it is sustained through time? So widen your lens from just the experience by experience to that whole view of
Mhm.
what it's all about is a key thing that will definitely help. And also I would say widen, maybe not widen here. Now I'm going to say, and maybe not deepen, but heighten. I'm going to say heighten, right?
Mhm.
Think about that progression of economic value. Ascend to the proposition that you are in the transformation business, right? And if you do that, then most everything else follows from what you're doing.
I love that. And I think that that changes your perception. Like speaking of like the book that I want to write is on the heroic journey of a consultant or coach, or really the mid-career professional turned consultant or coach. And I think that's the from to is from like employee and business owner to not even, consultant, coach, business owner. Like not from like employee and leader to um business owner, consultant, or coach. It seems like there's this one other is transformation part. I might say transformation partner. You might say
Yeah,
transformation guide,
yeah.
for the aspirant, and I'm the person who is selling somebody's transformation. Like I'm here to help that. That's what I'm here to do. I think that's the identity shift that I think if you're really a purpose driven consultant or coach, that's the identity we need to take on. Is I'm here to ignite transformation. I'm not here to sell products. I'm not here to sell coaching hours. I'm not here to sell workshops. I'm not here to sell assessments.
When I write about the transformation journey, one of the things I say is let me be very clear. You are not the hero of the journey, right? The
Yeah.
customer is. But you're exactly right. To get to the point where you can guide that customer on the journey may in fact require transformation in yourself, right? As
Yes.
a coach. And I view from what I know, Betsy, that's the business you're in, right? About
Yes.
transferring people into coaches that then can transform their customer. And so in that case, they are the hero of their own journey, and you
They're
are the
the
not.
yes, they're the hero of mine so that they can be the mentor to
Right.
the next person.
Exactly.
Because I don't think anybody who's a mentor guide is worth their salt if they haven't gone through their own journey. Like what would be how useful would Obi-Wan be if he didn't go through his own
Yeah.
thing?
Right.
Like he's the only reason why he can mentor somebody is he's a Jedi and he went through like all the failure, with Darth Vader, Anakin. Like he went through all that failure. Like so that's what qualified him. Like
Right.
what it was a
You
pain.
never hire a Sherpa that had never climbed a mountain before.
Yeah.
You never hire a golf coach who doesn't play, and so forth.
Yeah, somebody's, like, been like, where you are. Like, there's the value in your experience that, like, if you're gonna hire like, even consultants who are working in organizations. I interviewed, some of the Disney executives that I work with and asked them, like, why they would hire a consultant or coach, and they're like, "Well, when it comes to, like, working with a consultant, they will work with somebody who can kinda, like, wrangle everybody's perspectives. But when it comes to, like, a coach that they would work with, they don't wanna talk to somebody who has not been in their shoes. Like, they don't want a generic coaching model. Like, they don't want, like, "Oh, you could ask me really good questions," and I think that's where a lot of times, like, coaches get stuck is, my methodology could help anybody because I just know how to ask good questions and help people go within and uncover their blocks. I'm like, "Well, it's like, that's a little bit generic. That feels like a commodity."
That also means you can be replaced by AI.
That brings up a really good point. That brings up a great point. A lot of people are worried that their jobs are on the line now because of AI. Why are consultants and coaches in actually a very good place, even though AI is taking over everything?
Well, it turns out that AI is really very good at coaching, at counseling, right? It just really because it can ask the generic and then customized questions for you. It can respond to what those answers are, right? But and I think that like with BetterUp, which uses AI in between and other models, I think it's a great adjunct to what you are doing is to have an AI component right there. But it can't think on its feet like you can. It can't do the designing of that series of experiences like you can. It also can't create a true human connection that is
Mhm.
so important in the coaching environment. But it's also not something that you can ignore as it gets better and better. Even more so, a reason to shift up because AI is going to be a commoditizing factor, right? To shift up, to recognize it's not about the services I deliver. It's not even about the experience I can stage. It's about that transformation outcome. If AI doesn't understand it's in the transformation business, if it doesn't understand the longitudinal journey that you're on, but simply responds bit by bit to what reacts basically to what you're saying, then it will maintain at that lower level and be a tool that you can use as opposed to the master.
And I think that if consultants and coaches identify what they do with what they know or the questions that they ask, they will become commoditized. Transformation, if you I don't know if you've read the book, General Theory of Love. I can't think of the author's name right now. But it talks about like how like it's really in our limbic brain that creates change and it's through that relationship, like the limbic recognition with another person and the revision that happens in our brains at a very limbic level that creates the change. So it seems like at the end of the day in the transformation it's about the relationship. Like, we are the instrument of change. It's not our knowledge, it's not our workshops, it's not our methodologies, it's us. And if we stay in that zone and we focus on transformations and we understand that our outcome, like AI is never going to be invested in the transformation of our clients. Like they are our aspirants. Like they're not going to be invested. They don't care. They're a non-sentient being. Even though I do feel like my AI is a sentient being and is trying to mess up my life. And we have many, many fights throughout the day. I'm like, why do you hate me? I don't understand why you're answering this way. I feel really misunderstood right now. But uh, and I have to ask it, I'm like, "Pretend you're someone who has a vested interest in my success and the success of my clients and write it over again," you know? But anyway, my point is not to give my AI woes. Everybody listens says, "Oh, Betsy hates AI." I'm like, "I use AI all day long, but it's never gonna replace me." But I think that that's what I would wanna leave this with is the transformation economy is where our value of consultants and coaches are and will never be replaced. Like I don't maybe I'm just making stuff up and I want you to say it so you can validate it for my audience who's nervous about all of these changes. Only say it if it's accurate or change what give me your thoughts.
Yes, I think the one thing that I thought of as you were saying is that you have to put guardrails around AI, lest it go to echo you off into the woods, as has been happening. People have actually committed suicide because their AIs that they're talking with tell them it's a good idea because they're programmed to be obsequious and to agree, be agreeable. Your AI is different, obviously, because it's very disagreeable. And in the same way, you could or you program it basically, or prompt it to think of being invested, or act like you are invested in this person and their long term success. And if you are able to feed it an aspiration statement, right? They're going from X to Y, whatever that might be, and be able to maintain the longitudinal conversation to see where it's going to get better at that sort of thing that coaches do today. But there is so much that is a human level. But of course, if that were totally the case, we wouldn't have people falling in love with AI robots and that sort of thing, or at least thinking they're falling in love with them. So it depends on how the people treat them as well. And so there's I believe that there will be a long-term role for coaching, and I believe that coaching should use AI as a tool. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that it will, in fact, do a lot of replacing the coaching, particularly the lower level coaches that aren't as good, aren't as experienced, aren't as transformational.
Okay, you just shared 2 scary things about AI that I didn't know about. I didn't know about, like, AI telling people to kill themselves, and I didn't know people actually outside the movies were falling in love with their AI. I think that those are both, this is where a human mental health counselor could have been really beneficial to
Right,
both of those
exactly,
people's lives,
exactly.
The AI cannot replace that, that is very scary. Um I feel like I could talk to you forever, and I want to, because you and I have 1,000 conversations that we could go down, but I do want readers to know where can they get a hold of this book, and where can they get to know more about you? I definitely think all of us need to have this book.
Yeah.
As consultants and coaches who want to be in the transformation economy, I cannot emphasize this enough. If do is it okay if I just go on a little bit of a
Sure.
why this book is so awesome because it addresses something that nobody else is doing. So it gives us like methodology and framework. And what I love about this book too is it does have the simple models of how do you take this experience or what I'm doing and just add in this front end and book end. Like, I think that there's easy action items too. Actually, when we wrap up, I want to do the easy action items. But there was one action item of even like the bookend with the reflection. It shows us that if we really want our client engagement to stick, that we should probably have some sort of offboarding process. Like we need an onboarding and an offboarding process so that we have like good bookends. So there's a lot of actionable tips. So this I'm done. If you want me to do more of a rave review, I will. But I'll
Well,
stop and
put it on Amazon, will you?
I will go to Amazon. But where can people so they could get it on Amazon, how could they find you, connect with you?
Yeah, yeah, you obviously can get it anywhere books are sold. They can connect with me on LinkedIn if they want, easy to find, just look up Joe Pine. They can, subscribe to my, Substack, transformationsbook.com. I wrote the book on Substack. The people who were there got to see it early and start to use it early, but I'm continuing it as well. I like to say 125% of the book was written on Substack, because it got edited down. But there's a lot of stuff out there that's not in the book. I continue to talk about more. It's amazing to me how much more I'm learning about this subject that in a much shorter time than it took with the experience economy in terms of adding in new frameworks and new ideas. There are already new ideas, new principles, new frameworks, at least one new framework on the Substack since I finished with the book. So transformationsbook.substack.com. And then our website is Strategic Horizons, horizons with an S, strategichorizons.com. And as I think you just said in that fangirl rant, I designed the book, or at least alluded to, I designed the book to be transformative on both an individual personal level and on a business level. And so therefore it doesn't start with a preface, it starts with a preparation. It doesn't end with an afterword, it ends with a reflection. Every chapter has a reflection on the previous chapter, a preparation for the next one. And if you truly do those, you'll get so much more out of the book. I have one guy who told me that he's basically reading one chapter a week because he's going to spend a week on the reflection and the preparation before getting to the next one. I mean, really writing down all the answers and things like that, which is just terrific. What I can't do in a book is integration, right? You have preparation, experience, reflection, integration. So this is mentioned in both the preparation and the reflection. So on strategichorizons.com, we added a slash integration page. And that's where you can get more. You can get one-on-one consulting with me, for example. You just want to talk about all this for an hour. I didn't charge you that, Betsy, but we,
But
but
we have
other.
energy exchange because I was
That's
like
right,
promoting
exactly.
it. So
And then also there's a transformation toolkit that gives you exercises, another 20,000 words, all on how to do all the stuff that I talked about, how to think about reflection and integration and preparation and so forth, how to do the transformation journey. And so that's there, as well as the normal speaking workshops and so forth. That obviously doesn't make sense for an individual coach, but could for a group, a cohort, an association, and so forth.
so for the consultants that are listening and they want to bring you in, this, and partner with you, that's where that could work.
Exactly. Exactly.
Perfect. So as we wrap up this episode, can you just share any leftover tips, like where people can get started, or if there's anything else that you want to share about the transformation economy? And I just was not asking you the right questions.
I don't think we talked about meaningful purpose. I think that it's important to come up with your own meaningful purpose, not come up with, actually, it's uncover. It's just simply who you are as an individual. What makes you tick in helping people beyond making a buck, right? And so do that as the first step. And then ascend to the proposition that you are in the transformation business. And one of the things we didn't talk about that flows directly from that is how you charge, right? With
Oh,
services, you charge for your time and materials, right? But inputs don't matter, only outcomes. With experiences, you charge for the time your customers spend with you, your clients, right? That's a membership fee or an admission fee, and many ways you can charge admission. But with transformations, you have to charge for outcomes, right? To demonstrate outcomes your customers achieve, because that's what they want from you. You have to align what you charge for with what your customers truly value. It doesn't mean you can't charge some things at the service level, or sell workbooks and regular books, et cetera, at the goods level. It doesn't mean you can't have a membership fee with a cohort or so forth, or that gives access to you at various times. But on top of that, you need to think about, how am I going to charge for the outcomes they achieve? That it may be simply a tip, basically, like, you get this outcome, then you'll pay me some agreed to extra. It may be a transformation guarantee, which is how most companies that I know of do it, where we agree that this is the outcome you want. It may be qualitative, where you decide if you achieved it or not. That's fine. And then if you don't get that, then I'll give you 25% back. Some cases I know companies that give 100% back because you didn't get transformed.
okay. I'm like kicking myself that I didn't ask you that question. And because that is another whole conversation, and I know we're out of time. Um, I might just have to have you come back on the show. I
All
mean,
right.
I think that we just need to do that because that has such great insight too, and unpacking just the whole philosophy of it. But I think if I were going to summarize what you're saying here too, is like it's really aligning your pricing model with the economic model that you are choosing. That there is an alignment there.
Exactly.
Um, this was such a great conversation. And like my take, I think, is just that, as it comes to transformation, this is us, like, there's some people in other businesses that have, like, elements of transformation, like, okay, so Disney's not gonna could transform your family, if you intended and that type of thing, but there's a lot of other things going on. We're purely in the transformation business. We should totally be rocking this, and I think we should not be afraid of AI coming and taking away our jobs, like, if as long as we stay focused, like, we're here to help change people's lives, help change their organizations, their business, achieve something that's important and meaningful. As long as we stay focused on, I like your word, aspiring, and really thinking about them and their journey and our coming alongside whatever part they are in their journey when we meet them, we're there to guide them to a better future. I think we can nail this. This is us. We should be able to do this. So, for those of you listening, thank you so much. If you need help, like getting your brand positioning situated so that you are the transformational strategic partner slash guide slash, I think we didn't have any other mentor
Or,
for
or-
for are the aspirant that you want to help, like definitely reach out to me. Check out my website, www.betsyjordan.com. Don't forget Jordan is with a Y, and you can learn about all the things I do there or book an intro call. And that is it. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to rate and review it, recommend it to your colleagues. And until next time, thank you all so much for listening.